Okay, so then you might say, well, what's the alternative to that conceptualization that still allows for the possibility of union? Because you could have nihilism versus power, for example. Well, I think what the biblical stories are pointing to is an ethos of voluntary self-sacrifice, right? And that is actually the antithesis of power. And then you might say, well, there's a relationship between accepting that as a valid proposition and reconfiguring the notion of the self. Because when Tammy had Michaela, we took our daughter up to northern Saskatchewan when she was about a year old, and there's a bunch of old people there, and they're all just watching this baby like mad, like she was on fire, you know. They're all 65, 70, 75, and they're so thrilled that this little creature's around, and they're watching her intently. And Tammy said to me that it was such a relief to her not to be the center of attention, that something had become more important to her, and that calmed her down and it gave her purpose. And so then you might think the true self, rather than the hedonistic self-defeating self, which we axiomatically assume as the self, the true self is actually found in the consequences of voluntary self-sacrifice, because then you sacrifice, you get to be married. You sacrifice, you get to have friends. You sacrifice, you get to have colleagues and people who are voluntarily participating in your endeavors. You multiply your force. And then the self becomes like, it's the short-term psychopathic and manipulative whims that are sacrificed that you reflexively identify with the self. And what that's replaced with is harmony across all the levels of being simultaneously, from individual, like couple, family, town, society, state, and then all the way up Jacob's ladder, right? So, and that's based on, the argument would be, that's inevitably based on something like the acceptance of voluntary self-sacrifice as an existential necessity. And that seems to be, that's the pattern of Christ's life, clearly.
And obviously is partnered by the abortive sacrifice of Isaac in Genesis, which preempts and acts as a prologue to the ultimate sacrifice.